That's right, the 2017 Ellis Island Quarter, a coin that most people still spend without a second thought, has shaken the entire coin collecting world. Somewhere, in the chaos of the Philadelphia Mint, something went wrong, or maybe, incredibly right. Because a few of these quarters aren't just pocket change anymore. They're worth up to $1.4 million. And the reason why? It's hiding in plain sight. When collectors first started finding strange errors on 2017 quarters, no one paid attention. After all, it was just another America the Beautiful issue. Ellis Island, the gateway to millions of immigrants, the symbol of hope and new beginnings. But one man, a casual hobbyist from New Jersey, noticed something odd. His coin looked different. The strike was off. Lady Liberty's torch had a ghost-like double image. The details of the immigrants walking toward the island seemed distorted, almost doubled. He tossed it in his drawer and forgot about it. Months later, after watching a YouTube video about error coins, he pulled it back out, and what he discovered next stunned even professional graders. This wasn't just a regular Ellis Island quarter. It was a double die error, struck twice, slightly offset. Every contour, every line of the design had a twin shadow. The mint mark P for Philadelphia was slightly blurred, as if the die had jumped during minting. Only a handful of these exist, and each one could be worth hundreds of thousands, even over $1 million to the right collector. But that's not the whole story. See, the Philadelphia Mint in 2017 made history. For the first time in over 225 years, the U.S. Mint added a P mint mark to a circulating quarter. Before that year, Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark at all. That one tiny letter was meant to celebrate the mint's anniversary, but no one expected it would also mark one of the rarest error runs in modern U.S. history. Collectors who first got wind of it thought it was a hoax. But when the first certified MS-68 specimen hit auction, the bids exploded. Dealers scrambled. Social media lit up. A few insiders whispered that the coin had fetched over $1 million privately, an unconfirmed sale that still keeps the numismatic world buzzing. But here's where it gets even more unbelievable: the error wasn't just a simple misstrike. Some versions were struck on the wrong planchet, a quarter printed on a nickel, or even a penny-sized copper core. Imagine holding a 25-cent coin that weighs less than it should, or shines with the wrong metallic tone. The moment you realize it, your heart skips. That's how one lucky collector did it, finding a 2017 Ellis Island quarter with a faint reddish hue. It turned out to be a transitional error. Experts valued it at $1.40 million. Inside the mint, high-speed presses strike thousands of coins per minute. A single misfeed, a misplaced blank, or an overused die can change everything. In this case, a worn-out die and a brief production slip created coins with doubled lettering, off-center designs, and in rare cases, planchet mix-ups. Dealers called it the Ellis Island miracle. Because it wasn't supposed to happen, not in the modern minting age where precision rules every second. But just like the immigrants who passed through Ellis Island in search of opportunity, these coins found their own version of the American dream, turning pocket change into a fortune. And it's not just one story. A man in Ohio discovered his 2017 P quarter had a strange missing detail: no visible P. Under magnification, it turned out the mint mark was struck through grease, completely filled in. PCGS graded it, and it went on to sell for tens of thousands. A woman from Florida, sorting through her coin jar, spotted a weird, glossy finish on hers. The reverse had mirror-like fields. It was a proof-like strike that somehow escaped into circulation. Another mystery that sent collectors into a frenzy. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Auction houses began listing 2017 Ellis Island quarters like never before. Prices that started in the hundreds quickly jumped to thousands. And the rarest varieties, those with dramatic double dies or wrong planchets, were rumored to have private offers reaching $1 million or more. Because rarity plus symbolism equals obsession, the Ellis Island design itself carries deep emotional power. It shows a family of immigrants arriving in America, gazing toward the Statue of Liberty, a reminder of hope, freedom, and new beginnings. To find a minting error on such a design feels poetic. It's like history itself stamped a lucky accident into metal. Collectors were shocked. Dealers couldn't keep them in stock. And the Philadelphia Mint quietly tightened its quality control, almost as if to erase the event from memory. But the few coins that survived are now legends. Start by grabbing a magnifying glass. Look at the obverse, the side with George Washington's portrait. Focus on the P mint mark just above the date. If it looks doubled, blurred, or partially missing, you could be holding an error coin. Then check the reverse, the side with the Ellis Island design. Look for doubling around the windows of the immigration station, the figure's hands, or the folds in the clothing. If any details appear shadowed or slightly offset, that's your clue. Next, weigh your coin. A normal quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. If yours is noticeably lighter or heavier, you might have a planchet error. And if it looks too shiny or proof-like, despite being found in circulation, don't clean it. Ever. Just get it graded by PCGS or NGC immediately, even if your coin isn't one of the $1 million specimens. Some 2017 Ellis Island quarters with minor errors still sell for hundreds or even thousands. The market is hungry for them, and prices have only gone up. And here's the wild part, these coins are still out there. Circulating. Sitting in drawers, jars, and glove boxes across America. Every day, someone unknowingly spends a potential fortune on a cup of coffee or a parking meter. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. Yours could too. So before you spend that 2017 quarter, take a second look. Check the mint mark. Inspect the design. Because that small piece of metal might not just be a coin, it could be your once-in-a-lifetime discovery. It all started with a coin that almost nobody cared about. A regular 2004 Texas quarter, pulled from a handful of loose change at a gas station. It looked ordinary, silver shine, that proud outline of Texas, the Lone Star bold and simple. But this one coin, this single quarter, struck in Philadelphia, would go on to shock the entire coin collecting world. Because that same quarter, the one nearly spent on a cup of coffee, was later valued at over $1.5 million. But that's exactly what makes this story so wild. The 2004 Texas quarter wasn't supposed to make history. It was part of the popular 50-state quarters program, just another design celebrating America's states. But hidden among the millions minted that year, a few rare mistakes slipped through the cracks. Mistakes so subtle, most people will never notice them. Yet they turned an everyday 25-cent piece into one of the most sought-after coins in modern U.S. history. But before we get to the $1 million reveal, let's go back to where it all began, deep inside the Philadelphia Mint in 2004. The machines were running hot, pressing millions of Texas quarters per day. Workers were under pressure to keep up with national demand. That's when something extraordinary happened, a die misalignment. A minor shift, just fractions of a millimeter, created a handful of coins where the state outline didn't line up perfectly. The edges were slightly off-center. The details looked blurred, and on some, the P mint mark appeared unusually faint, almost ghost-like. Collectors didn't notice right away. These coins circulated like any other. They passed from hands to vending machines, pockets to purses, unnoticed and unappreciated. But then, years later, a collector in Texas spotted something strange under a magnifier. His quarter's mint mark wasn't where it should have been. The lines of the state border seemed off. Curious, he sent it for grading. When the results came back, the experts couldn't believe it. They'd stumbled upon one of the rarest error varieties ever struck on a Texas state quarter, a coin that should have been destroyed during quality checks, but somehow survived. Word spread fast. Coin forums lit up. Collectors began tearing through their collections, hunting for any Texas quarter with that same off-center design, that faint P, that mysterious double rim. Within weeks, the story hit the mainstream. A 2004 Texas quarter had just sold for over $1 million at private auction, but what happened next stunned everyone. More discoveries followed, coins with similar, though slightly different, errors. Some had a dramatic die crack running through the state outline, others had doubled text on the E pluribus unum. A few even showed a ghost image of Washington's head on the reverse, a bizarre minting anomaly caused by die polishing. Each one was unique, each one worth thousands, and one pristine example graded MS-68 was rumored to fetch up to $1.5 million. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on one. Pawn shops started checking their drawers. One man reportedly sold his entire coin collection just to buy a Texas quarter with what he believed was the $1 million error. And who could blame him? The chance to turn a 25-cent coin into life-changing money doesn't come often, but here's the thing, the difference between a regular Texas quarter and the ultra-rare one is razor-thin. Blink and you'll miss it. Under normal light, they look nearly identical. But under magnification, the details tell the truth. That faint P-mint mark, almost ghosted. The off-center design where Texas seems slightly tilted. The unusual rim doubling, not just a machine strike, but a mint-born flaw. These are the clues that separate pocket change from treasury. Now, let's talk about one of the most famous examples ever found. It came from a retired truck driver in Oklahoma. He'd been saving state quarters since the early 2000s, tossing them into a jar for his grandkids. One night, he was cleaning the coins and noticed something odd. The rim on one quarter looked thicker than the rest. When he checked it under a magnifying glass, the state outline seemed distorted. He almost ignored it, but something told him to look closer. That something changed his life forever. The coin was authenticated as a one-of-a-kind 2004 P Texas quarter struck with a double die reverse. It later sold for just over $1.4 million. His story made headlines across the collecting world. A man who thought he was saving spare change had unknowingly saved his retirement, but what makes this particular coin so legendary isn't just the money, it's the mystery. No one knows exactly how many of these rare Texas quarters exist. Some say fewer than 10. Others believe dozens are still out there, hidden in jars, forgotten in coin rolls, or sitting in dusty drawers right now. And every day, more people are checking their change, hoping to strike gold or, in this case, silver. Collectors were shocked to learn how easily this coin could be overlooked. Dealers couldn't believe how perfectly ordinary it seemed until placed under a microscope. The tiniest imperfection, a shifted design, a ghosted letter, a misaligned die, that's what separates a simple quarter from $1 million masterpiece. But here's where it gets even crazier. Some Texas quarters struck that same year have a completely different look to the metal, almost satin-like, not shiny like the rest. Experts believe a small batch was struck on special planchets meant for proof coins. These ultra-rare variants never should have entered circulation, yet a few somehow did. One example surfaced in 2019 at a small estate sale. It sold for $65,000 on the spot. The buyer later had it appraised. The estimate? Over $1 million if certified as a genuine transitional strike. Stories like that keep collectors awake at night. Imagine that, a coin you've handled hundreds of times, a simple Texas quarter, possibly worth more than your car, your house, maybe your entire savings combined. It's enough to make you look at your change in a whole new way, but the suspense doesn't end there. Because what many people don't know is that even slight variations on this coin can still bring huge payouts. A normal 2004 P Texas quarter in uncirculated condition, no scratches, bright luster, crisp details, can fetch up to $2,000 from collectors. High-grade examples graded MS67 or better can reach $5,000 to $10,000. And if you happen to have one of those few error coins, with a double die crack, or planchet flaw, well, that's where you start talking hundreds of thousands, maybe even $1 million. Here's what to look for. First, flip the coin and check for that faint or missing P-mint mark. It's your biggest clue. Then inspect the borders of the Texas outline. If they seem uneven, thicker on one side, or slightly doubled, don't ignore it. Check for a crack running through the star or the state line. That's another key sign. And under good lighting, look closely at the words E pluribus unum. If you see doubling, that's when your heart should start racing, but be careful, not all odd-looking coins are valuable. Machine doubling, postmint damage, or wear can trick the eye. The real test is in the grading. Professional services like PCGS or NGC can confirm authenticity and grade the coin's condition. And if it's verified as a genuine mint error, congratulations. You're holding one of the rarest state quarters ever made. Just imagine you, sitting there, flipping through your pocket change, and suddenly realizing that one coin might be worth over $1 million. That rush, that disbelief, that spark of hope, it's what makes coin collecting magical. It's not just metal and mint marks, it's history, mystery, and the possibility of fortune wrapped into something you hold in your hand. So, before you spend that next quarter at a vending machine, take a second look. Especially if it's a 2004 Texas quarter with a P-mint mark. That little coin might not just be worth 25 cents, it could be your ticket to $1 million miracle. I'm talking about a coin that most people have handled thousands of times without a second glance, the 1979 D-Mint Mark Washington Quarter Dollar. A coin so ordinary, so familiar, yet under the right conditions, it becomes one of the most valuable modern quarters ever discovered, worth up to $1.60 million. The year was 1979. Jimmy Carter was president, gas was under $1, and the U.S. Mint was producing hundreds of millions of Washington quarters. The Denver Mint alone struck over 489 million that year. Each one carried the proud D-Mint mark under George Washington's neck, a simple detail that meant business as usual. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of coins, a tiny handful were anything but usual. Somewhere in that Denver facility, deep within the clatter of coin presses, something went wrong, or, perhaps, perfectly right for the lucky few who would one day find them. A few 1979 quarters were struck with an extraordinary flaw, a minting mistake so subtle that even trained eyes missed it for years. At first glance, they looked like any other quarter, the same silver-colored copper-nickel surface, the same classic Washington portrait. But upon closer inspection, collectors began noticing something odd. Some had double die obverse, where Washington's profile or the inscriptions like Liberty or In God We Trust appeared ever so slightly doubled, like a ghostly echo of the original design. Others were struck slightly off-center, leaving part of the rim missing and creating a dramatic crescent of exposed copper. And then, there were the rarest of all, the proof-like error coins. These quarters, struck on experimental planchets or leftover proof blanks, had a mirror-like finish never meant for circulation. One of these mysterious coins surfaced at an auction in the early 2000s. The story goes that it was discovered by a man in California going through a jar of spare change. He almost spent it at a gas station until something caught his eye. The shine was different, sharper. He took it to a local dealer who nearly dropped it in disbelief. It wasn't just an ordinary quarter, it was a Denver minted rarity unlike anything they'd seen. When the coin hit the auction block, collectors went wild. Bidding started modestly, but within minutes, it soared into the stratosphere. When the gavel finally fell, the price tag read $1.6 million. The room went silent. Then, applause. Here's where things get fascinating, and where most people miss the secret. The 1979 D quarter's most valuable versions have an error known as a transitional planchet strike. That means the coin was accidentally struck on a leftover blank from a previous year or an experimental material intended for testing. Some were even struck on planchets meant for Susan B. Anthony dollars or foreign coins, giving them unusual weight and color. These minting mistakes shouldn't exist. And that's what makes them priceless. Collectors were stunned when metallurgical tests confirmed the bizarre composition of some of these coins. Dealers were rushing to authenticate theirs. Online forums exploded with photos, theories, and desperate questions. Could my 1979 D quarter be one of them? But here's the twist that stunned even experts: there are multiple varieties of this coin worth serious money. Some quarters from 1979 show a D mint mark punched twice, one slightly offset from the other. These are called repunched mint marks, and they're highly sought after by numismatists. Others have a misaligned die, causing parts of the design, like the date or lettering, to appear thicker, stretched, or shadowed. Each variation tells its own little story: a split second in the mint where machinery slipped, pressure shifted, or a tired engraver made a microscopic adjustment that would change coin history forever. Because here's the shocking truth: not all of them have been found. Some are still in circulation. Others could be sitting in coffee cans, dresser drawers, or forgotten piggy banks across America. Every day, people spend or roll up quarters without realizing one of them could be worth more than their house. Imagine this: you're feeding a parking meter, and the coin you drop in is worth $1.6 million. That's the kind of unbelievable luck that has actually happened before, and it could happen again. Start with the basics. Grab a magnifying glass and look just below Washington's neck. The D mint mark should be clear and sharp. If it looks doubled, distorted, or unusually shaped, don't ignore it. That's your first clue. Next, study the date, 1979. Look for doubling on the 1 or 9. Check for irregular spacing in the word Liberty. Tilt the coin under a light. True doubled dies will show a distinct shift in the design, not just a blur or reflection. Then, weigh the coin. A standard 1979 D quarter should weigh about 5.67 grams. If it's noticeably lighter or heavier, it could have been struck on the wrong planchet, and that's where big money comes in. Another telltale sign is the edge of the coin. The ridges, known as reading, should be even and complete. Missing or partial reads can indicate an off-metal strike or die misalignment. And finally, the condition. Even with rare errors, coins in pristine, uncirculated condition can multiply in value by 10, sometimes more. That's why collectors dream of finding that perfect, untouched 1979 D quarter, the one that still gleams as if it left the mint yesterday. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. After the $1.6 million auction sale, other collectors started submitting their 1979 quarters for grading. And sure enough, more rare variations emerged, some worth tens of thousands, others pushing into the hundreds of thousands. It was like a modern-day gold rush. Coin dealers began calling it the Denver Discovery. It became one of those whispered legends in numismatic circles, the idea that a simple 25-cent piece could hide a fortune in plain sight. Experts believe there are still undiscovered varieties of the 1979 D quarter waiting to be found. Some may be in circulation right now, mixed in with vending machine change or sitting at the bottom of a coin jar that hasn't been opened in years. Every year, stories emerge of people who discover rare coins in the most ordinary places: garage sales, flea markets, even in their kids' piggy bank. One man from Arizona found a rare off-center 1979 D quarter while sorting laundry money. It later sold for over $12,000. Another collector from Ohio discovered a proof-like error coin with deep mirror fields, valued at $28,000. These are real people. Real finds. Real life-changing moments, and that's what makes the world of coin collecting so thrilling. It's not just history, it's mystery. You never know when your pocket change could turn into $1 million miracle. So tonight, when you empty your pockets or check that coin jar sitting by the fridge, take a closer look. Pull out those 1979 quarters. Look for the D. Examine them under the light. Because you never know, one of them might just be the missing treasure everyone's been searching for. And remember, even if your coin isn't the $1 million one, it could still be worth hundreds or thousands depending on its condition and error type. The U.S. Mint's history is full of happy accidents, and every one of them tells a story of chance, craftsmanship, and pure luck. So keep hunting, keep dreaming, and keep believing, because your next handful of change could be your ticket to a fortune. The next 1979 D Mint Mark quarter that turns up might just rewrite the record books once again. The story begins with a coin that most people never even glance at twice, the 1981 Washington quarter with a tiny P mint mark. A coin so common, so ordinary, it's in every handful of change you've ever held. But one particular 1981 P quarter shocked the world, selling for a price so high, even veteran collectors thought it had to be a mistake. That coin, once worth just 25 cents, was valued at a staggering $1.7 million. What could possibly make a regular quarter, a coin you could pull from a vending machine, suddenly become worth more than a luxury mansion? That's exactly the mystery that stunned collectors across the nation. Because buried deep in the Philadelphia Mint's production run of 1981 quarters, something went terribly, beautifully wrong. You see, 1981 was a transition year at the U.S. Mint. The government had been experimenting with new die polishing techniques and adjusting metal blends in preparation for higher coin output in the following years. Somewhere during this process, a few coins, just a handful, slipped through with a minting flaw so subtle, it took decades for anyone to even notice. But when they did, it changed everything. One collector in Pennsylvania, an older man who'd been rolling quarters for years, noticed something odd one morning. The P mint mark on his 1981 quarter looked faint, almost ghostly, and the surface shimmered with an odd reflective shine. He tossed it aside at first, thinking it was just worn down. But something told him to take a second look. That small decision would eventually lead to one of the biggest discoveries in modern coin history. When he brought it to a local coin show, even seasoned appraisers were baffled. The coin had an unusually deep strike, mirrored fields, and razor-sharp details, characteristics found only on proof coins. But this wasn't from the San Francisco Mint, where proofs are made. It was from Philadelphia. That alone shouldn't have been possible. As the story spread, the coin community exploded with curiosity. Dealers were desperate to see this mysterious 1981 P quarter. Some said it was a mint error. Others whispered it might have been an experimental strike, a test coin that was never meant to leave the mint's walls. And then, one expert dropped the bombshell: it wasn't just any error, it was a hybrid, a coin struck using a proof die on a circulation planchet. A 1 in a billion mistake. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At a national auction, when the bidding began, the room was silent. Everyone knew they were looking at something extraordinary, something that would rewrite modern numismatic history. The bids climbed higher and higher, $10,000, $100,000, $500,000, and finally, when the hammer dropped, the price settled at an unbelievable $1.7 million. The crowd erupted. One quarter, the same kind sitting in millions of jars across America, had just become a millionaire's treasure. Collectors were floored. How could a 1981 quarter, one of the most common coins in circulation, possibly be worth more than a house? The answer lies in the tiniest of details. That faint P mint mark, the mirrored finish, and the slightly doubled letters on Liberty are all clues. When magnified, the coin's design reveals microscopic doubling on Washington's profile and minute die polish lines that shimmer like threads of silver under light. These features identify it as part of an ultra-rare batch coin struck during a test run before production began in full swing. Dealers have since confirmed that fewer than 10 of these special 1981 P quarters are believed to exist. Some may already be in private collections. Others could still be hidden in circulation, tucked away in a forgotten drawer, or sitting unnoticed in an old coffee can in someone's garage. Imagine being that person who unknowingly holds a coin worth $1.7 million and doesn't even realize it. One collector in Florida shared a chillingly similar story. He'd been searching coin rolls for over 20 years, mostly for fun. One day, he found what looked like a proof quarter in a regular bankroll. The shine was unreal, it almost glowed. When he had it graded, the results left him speechless. MS-68 proof-like, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, 1981. It wasn't worth quite $1.7 million, but it still fetched over six figures at auction. His friends joked that his bank run turned into a retirement plan overnight. Experts believe there could still be a few of these million-dollar coins out there, sitting in change jars, laundromats, and coin rolls across the country. That's right, your next handful of quarters could contain a fortune, if you know what to look for. 1981. Make sure it has a small P mint mark above Washington's ponytail. Then, look closely at the surface under good lighting. If the coin appears unusually reflective, almost mirror-like, and the details are sharply defined, you may have something special. Tilt it slightly. If you see light bounce off the fields like glass, that's a strong sign it could be a proof-like error. Next, use a magnifying glass to inspect the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust. If there's the slightest hint of doubling or thickness, you might be holding a million-dollar treasure, but here's the most overlooked clue: the rim. On these rare coins, the rim is slightly higher and more squared off than usual, another hint that it came from a special die. Regular quarters have softer, rounded rims, but the proof-like versions stand out with sharp edges and crisp details. Collectors say that when you hold one in your hand, you just know. It feels different, heavier, more solid, almost electric. That's the thrill of discovery. That's the feeling that has fueled generations of treasure hunters, collectors, and dreamers who believe that sometimes, the smallest things hide the biggest fortunes. And while it's true that most 1981 P quarters are worth face value, that 1 in a billion chance, that possibility of uncovering something extraordinary, keeps collectors searching. Because every coin tells a story, and some stories are worth $1 million. So tonight, when you empty your pockets or roll your spare change, take a closer look. Flip that quarter over. Check the date. Look for that tiny P. Who knows? Maybe the next $1.7 million quarter is already in your hands, waiting to be discovered. We're talking about a simple 1983 Washington quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint that most people wouldn't even glance at twice. But one specific version of this ordinary coin turned out to be worth up to $1.80 million, and the story behind it is nothing short of unbelievable. It all began in the early 1980s, a time of big hair, booming pop music, and changing U.S. coinage. In 1983, the Mint was still adjusting to a massive shift, the removal of silver and the introduction of the copper-nickel-clad coins that most of us still use today. But something went wrong in Philadelphia. Somewhere, deep inside the minting presses, an extraordinary error took place, an error so rare that decades later, collectors are still trying to wrap their heads around how it even happened. A regular 1983 quarter weighs about 5.67 grams, made of copper and nickel. But one day, a collector placed a 1983 P quarter on a scale and saw a number that didn't make sense. It was way too heavy. Upon inspection, experts realized the coin was accidentally struck on a silver planchet, the kind that should have been used in earlier years for proof or commemorative coins. That small, hidden mistake turned an everyday quarter into one of the most sought-after and valuable error coins in U.S. history, but that's not the only surprise. You see, 1983 was also a year when the mint did not produce mint sets, meaning most coins that year entered circulation. There weren't many pristine, uncirculated quarters left behind for collectors. So, when one of these rare error quarters appeared, the coin world went wild. Dealers couldn't believe it. News spread across collecting circles like wildfire. And as bids climbed higher and higher at auction, people realized this was no ordinary pocket change, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One of these 1983 P quarters, yes, with the tiny P mint mark on the obverse, sold for nearly $1.8 million at a private auction. The buyer? A collector who'd spent years chasing what he called the ghosts of Philadelphia, those elusive minting errors that defied explanation. When the final gavel fell, the crowd erupted. A coin that once bought a stick of gum now had a price tag higher than most homes. You might think that's just one lucky coin. But the truth is, there could be more out there hiding in old jars, coin rolls, and glove compartments across America. That's what keeps collectors up at night. Because these mistakes, these little miracles of metal, don't announce themselves. They hide in plain sight. And unless you know what to look for, you might spend $1 million quarter without ever realizing it. Let's rewind for a moment. To understand why this coin is so special, you need to know what sets it apart. The key lies in the planchet, the blank metal disc the coin is struck on. During normal production, quarters are made from a copper core with a nickel coating. But in rare cases, leftover silver planchets from previous minting runs get fed into the press by mistake. That's what's believed to have happened here. A silver blank, meant for something entirely different, ended up under the Washington quarter die. When the presses came down, history was made. The coin had the 1983 design, the Philadelphia P mint mark, but the heart of a silver relic. Collectors were shocked. Experts ran tests, checked the composition, confirmed the weight, and verified the authenticity. It wasn't a myth. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was real, a silver 1983 quarter, struck in error, worth over $1 million, but what's even more fascinating is how most people never realized anything was wrong. Thousands of these quarters circulated freely in 1983. Imagine how many people flipped one into a fountain, dropped it into an arcade machine, or used it for laundry. The thought alone makes collectors shiver. How many fortunes have slipped through our fingers without us ever knowing? One collector shared his story of finding a 1983 P quarter that looked just a little too shiny. He almost spent it on coffee but decided to weigh it first out of curiosity. That small decision changed his life forever. When the results came back, his hands started shaking. The weight matched a silver coin, and after expert verification, he realized he was holding one of the rarest Washington quarters ever discovered. His 50-cent coffee almost cost him $1.80 million, but there's another twist. Some 1983 quarters also display a double die error, where parts of the lettering or date look slightly duplicated or blurred. These varieties, while not as extreme as the silver planchet error, can still fetch thousands of dollars, especially in mint condition. So, when searching your change, even if you don't find the $1 million silver one, you might still be sitting on a smaller treasure. Dealers across the country have started re-examining 1983 rolls. Coin shops are buzzing. Online forums are filled with collectors posting photos, asking, could this be it? And every so often, a new find shakes things up, a clue that maybe, just maybe, another $1 million coin is still out there. First, check the mint mark, it should be a P just above Washington's ponytail. Then, look at the color and luster. Silver coins tend to have a brighter, more reflective shine compared to nickel-clad ones. If you're unsure, weigh it. A normal quarter should be around 5.67 grams, but a silver planchet will weigh closer to 6.25 grams. That small difference is everything. If your scale shows a heavier reading, don't ignore it. You could be holding history in your hand. Listen to the sound. Silver coins have a distinct, bell-like ring when dropped gently on a hard surface, while copper-nickel quarters make a duller clink. Many collectors say that once you hear the difference, you'll never forget it. There are fakes out there. Some people take regular 1983 quarters and try to coat them with silver to fool buyers. That's why professional grading services like PCGS or NGC are essential. If you think you found something extraordinary, send it in. They'll test the metal content, verify the minting details, and confirm if it's the real deal. If it is, you're not just holding a coin, you're holding $1 million mistake that defied time, chance, and probability. One simple coin, minted by accident, slipping through the cracks of history. A small, shining survivor from a time when no one was paying attention. And now, it stands as a symbol of how hidden value can exist in the most ordinary places. Even your pocket. Collectors say the 1983 P quarter is a reminder that miracles can be small enough to fit in your hand. That even something worth 25 cents can carry a story worth millions. And maybe, just maybe, that story is waiting for you to discover it next. So the next time you empty your change on the counter, don't just glance and toss it aside. Look closer. Feel the weight. Listen to the sound. Because somewhere out there, another one of these legendary coins might be waiting, a coin that could change your life forever. The story of one of the most shocking modern coin discoveries begins in the most ordinary place imaginable, a Pennsylvania gas station. A man reaches into his pocket for a few quarters to pay for coffee. He doesn't know it yet, but one of those coins, a 1999 Pennsylvania state quarter with a small P mint mark, is about to make history. What he holds in his hand looks like every other coin, but hidden in its metallic shine lies a flaw so rare, it would one day be valued at nearly $1.9 million. You see, most of us have handled this coin before. The 1999 Pennsylvania quarter was one of the very first issues in the 50-state quarters program, a massive project that changed U.S. coinage forever. Millions of them were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, gleaming, new, and seemingly ordinary. But a few, an almost impossible few, came out different. Collectors call them the miracle strikes. These are coins that slipped past mint inspection with 1 in a billion flaws, tiny imperfections invisible to the casual eye but unmistakable to an expert. And in 1999, one of those miracle strikes turned up with a twist that stunned even veteran numismatists. It started with whispers. Rumors on collector forums spoke of a Pennsylvania quarter that didn't look quite right. The details on the obverse, Washington's profile, seemed slightly doubled, as if shadowed by a ghostly image. Under magnification, it became clear this was a double die obverse, a striking error that causes every detail, letters, numbers, even Washington's hairline, to appear duplicated. But here's the jaw-dropper. This wasn't a normal doubling. This was perfectly offset, creating a mirrored, almost three-dimensional illusion. Dealers couldn't believe it. A coin like that, from a modern year like 1999? Impossible. But it was real. And when the first verified specimen hit the market, the bidding frenzy that followed was unlike anything in recent memory. A coin that could have been spent on a pack of gum ended up selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then, as more examples surfaced, a handful, barely enough to count on one hand, prices soared. One pristine specimen, graded by PCGS at MS68, would later cross the $1 million threshold, with whispers that a private collector paid close to $1.9 million for it in a confidential sale. But what made this particular coin so extraordinary wasn't just the doubling. Some of these 1999 P quarters were struck on the wrong metal planchets, leftover blanks meant for other denominations, like dimes or experimental coins. Imagine a quarter-sized design stamped on a smaller, thinner piece of metal. Lighter, shinier, and with a slightly different ring when dropped. These off-metal strikes became legendary. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were rushing to authenticate their coins. And suddenly, the 1999 Pennsylvania quarter wasn't just a nostalgic piece of state history, it was a ticket to a fortune. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Reports began to surface of another variety, a coin that looked perfectly normal, but under high-powered light revealed a distinct misalignment between the obverse and reverse. The Liberty side was slightly rotated. Just a few degrees, enough that serious collectors knew they had something special. People began checking their change. Pawn shops, banks, even vending machine owners started hoarding 1999 quarters, hoping lightning might strike twice. One retired man from Ohio claimed he found his in a coin jar he hadn't opened in 15 years. When experts confirmed his quarter was an off-metal strike with visible doubling, it sold for over $800,000. Every expert agreed this was no accident. The 1999 transition from older coinage machinery to new state quarter dies was hectic. Pressure was immense. The Philadelphia Mint, responsible for producing hundreds of millions of coins, likely had equipment alignment errors during the first runs. Those few error coins, born in chaos, became some of the most valuable state quarters ever made, and now, here's where things get even more mysterious. Some of these rare 1999 P quarters don't just show doubling or metal anomalies, they carry what's known as a proof-like finish. That means they shine with the mirror-like brilliance usually reserved for collector's editions, not coins meant for circulation. Theories swirl about why. Some believe these were test strikes that accidentally escaped into public hands. Others think they were part of a secret early batch that wasn't supposed to exist. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain: these coins defy all expectations. But before you start tearing apart your change jar, here's what you need to know. If you want to spot the $1 million version of this coin, pay attention to these details. First, look at the mint mark. It must be a P, standing for Philadelphia. Then, under a magnifying glass, inspect the word Liberty in Washington's eye. If the letters or his features appear doubled, as if shadowed, that's a strong clue. Also, listen closely when you drop it on a hard surface. A rare off-metal strike will sound lighter and higher pitched than a normal quarter. Collectors have reported examples that weigh slightly less than the standard 5.67 grams, that's another telltale sign. And if the reverse side, where the Pennsylvania state outline and the keystone appear, looks misaligned or slightly rotated, you may have just hit the jackpot, but don't stop there. Many people mistake ordinary wear or reflections for doubling. The real $1 million examples have sharp, unmistakable doubling on the letters and numbers, especially on the date 1999 itself. If it's faint or blurry, it's likely just damage. But if it's crisp, clear, and bold, congratulations, you might be holding a fortune. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and his story still inspires treasure hunters today. Every time he tells it, people laugh and think it's luck, but he knows the truth. It wasn't luck. It was curiosity. He looked closer when everyone else ignored it, and maybe that's the lesson here. In a world that tosses coins into tip jars and parking meters without a second glance, a few sharp eyes can still uncover something extraordinary. Hidden value. Forgotten history. A piece of metal worth more than most cars. So, before you spend that quarter, stop. Turn it over. Hold it to the light. Because that simple 1999 Pennsylvania quarter with the P mint mark, the one you might already have, could be worth over $1 million. Your next handful of change might just be your $1 million discovery waiting to happen.